back to the Socialist Shelf, the podcast that cares about good fiction and changing the world. It's me, Jacob, here with Joss.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody, or morning, or whenever you're listening to this, or some, liminal space in between if you're in that world from the three-body problem. Listen, I've got, kind of a personal anecdote to open this episode up with.
Lay it on me.
So, and here in 2019, the spring of 2019, I came down with the flu, like a really, just unbelievably bad case of the flu. And for whatever reason, it caused, all kinds of stomach problems. The some way it was like interacting with my throat and stuff. The stomach acid would literally give me acid reflux to the point it would cause my throat to partially close up, to where I felt like I couldn't breathe. This is happening while I have the flu. So I go to the emergency room, I'm in and out of the doctor emergency room. They're testing. They didn't even realize it was the flu because they're looking for symptoms of an allergic reaction or something. For weeks, I am wiped out. Genuinely for weeks, I'm in bed getting over this flu. I lose 15 pounds. It's a really just terrible experience. The whole time I have a lot of trouble breathing. I genuinely think the doctor says he's never seen worse acid reflux in any person because it was an unnatural thing, that my esophagus was literally partially hardened and cracked and gotten red from this acid reflux. It was that bad. And from just the flu and all that stuff. It did a number on me. And for literally over a year afterwards, I would have night terrors, waking up thinking I couldn't breathe because I got to the point of thinking I was going to die. I say all this to say, I would rather go through that again than reread this book.
Oh boy. Oh yes.
This book was worse.
Yeah, I have a similar medical experience related to my mammoth procedure that I feel similarly about, because this one is dire.
Holy. Okay. You've seen it from the title. We're talking about The President is Missing by James Patterson and the one, the only President Bill Clinton. Former President Bill Clinton.
Yes, butcher of Yugoslavia, champion of mass incarceration, personal beneficiary of slave labor in the Arkansas governor's mansion, and perhaps worst of all, husband of Hillary Clinton.
And writer of this book. This book is up there with his crimes.
In part writer, we should say.
Yeah, no, definitely not definitely not doing the legwork here. But nevertheless, morally responsible. I will hold him morally responsible for this book along with James Patterson. James Patterson, though, I've actually never read a book by him. I certainly never read a book by Bill Clinton before. I didn't know much about him aside from, you just see him everywhere in just bookstores, just very much an airplane novel type of guy. And I think Joss might have some background on it.
Yeah, and you're not kidding about seeing him everywhere, literally just by virtue of sheer volume of books moved. Well, we'll get into that. So, James Patterson, another living author. We're kind of on a streak here, aren't we? Yeah, he's born July.
Well, Kurt Vonnegut's not living.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll rack him up.
Why did I say July? I'll trade Bill Clinton for Kurt Vonnegut. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
22nd March 1947 is the day he was born. I don't know why I said July. He's still alive and writing, shall we say, at 76. He lives in Lake Worth Beach in Palm Beach County, Florida. His mother was a teacher. His father was an insurance broker. And he went to Manhattan College. He graduated summa cum laude from that with a bachelor's in English, not unlike you and I. Unlike you and I, he got his master's then at Vanderbilt. And he published his first book not long after that. He published his first book, The Thomas Berryman Number, in 1976. So at the time, he's almost 30. He's writing on the side of his day job at that point, which was he was working in advertising. And this is kind of a hobby for him right then. He writes 7 more standalone thrillers, so not unlike the territory that early Crichton occupies, right? Between then and about 1996. when he retires from advertising. And during this time, he also starts his most famous series. People might know him best from Alex Cross, which is a series of mystery thrillers about the titular. He's both a DC police detective and an FBI agent. And that particular series began with Along Came a Spider in 1993. There's this kind of nursery rhyme theme that he goes with for a while. You know, there's Along Came a Spider, there's Kiss the Girls, there's Mary Mary, and then the 12th book is just called Cross or Alex Cross. So he kind of abandons that. And it's still going. The most recent book is last year's Triple Cross. It's the 30th in the series.
Wow. It's still going. I didn't realize that was all part of that series.
It's still going. It's still going. No, absolutely. You know,
I guess you find a thing that works.
Yeah, no, it's you know, for a given, I've never read Alex Cross. It could be fantastic for all I know, but you know, we have a frame of reference that might seem to suggest otherwise.
My spouse really likes Maximum Ride.
Oh yeah, oh
yeah,
he
that's
is
like a
us,
kids or YA series that he wrote.
Yeah, he's written for adults, he's written for children, he's written fiction, nonfiction. He's kind of all over, right? And you know, indeed, his career has quite frankly exploded since then. Now as I said, he retired from his advertising job in 1996, and from then he pivoted to writing full time. And it looks to be, I was trolling through his bibliography here. It looks to be around 2002 that he starts co-authoring many of his books. Now he credits these people as co-authors. Really, they're ghostwriters. Other thriller writers like Andrew Gross, Peter DeYoung, and Maxine Pietro, who the last of whom he knew from his advertising career. Gross in particular, this I found interesting, started collaborating with him on the second book of the Women's Murder Club series. And the head of the publishing house that got them in contact introduced Gross to Patterson this way. He sent Patterson one of Gross's manuscripts. Written on the cover was, "This guy does women well." So, you know, that's that half of the equation where that comes from.
Gotcha.
And you know, to credit where it's due, or to be fair, Patterson self-identifies as a plot guy, as an outline guy, rather than a crafting sentence after sentence guy. You know, his words.
I can tell.
But standalones and collabs together, he's had a hand in over 200 novels since 1976. 114 of them were New York Times bestsellers. He holds the record for most New York Times bestsellers by a single author. And to return to
100, did you say 114?
114, yes. He's
Jeez.
Everywhere. And to return,
I knew it was
to what
big,
you said.
wowza.
Oh yeah. And to return to your point about that, right? 1 in every 17 hardcovers sold in the United States, 6% of all American hardcovers, James Patterson novel. Sold, you can't throw a rock without hitting a fucking Patterson book.
That's results.
Yeah.
You gotta hand him that.
He's sold 305 million copies of his works worldwide. It's more than Stephen King, more than John Grisham, more than Dan Brown combined recently.
Wow.
Yeah, big names, and this guy's even bigger. He's the first author to have two number ones on the New York Times adult and children's bestseller list at the same time.
Wow. I mean, I just keep saying wow, but I don't even know what else to say.
It's a scale that you and I, frankly, I have difficulty comprehending it. You know?
It's just like the numbers are like, when numbers get that big, they almost like cease to like mean anything. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They certainly do have meaning, but it's just like just like when you're like when you're talking the hundreds of millions on anything, it's like,
oh yeah. Well, I mean, imagine your average hardcover book, right? Hardcover 500-page book. Fix that in your mind. Are you seeing it?
I see it.
Now imagine 305 million of those.
Yes. Yeah. I'm gonna need more room. That's for sure.
So yeah, he had success in the advertising field, and honestly, it shows. Because he's been labeled more of a brand. He's been criticized as more of a content mill than as an artist who develops his craft.
Sure.
You know, he's set up scholarships and engaged in various forms of philanthropy, as you know, any wildly successful person does. He set up a site called Read Kiddo Read to catalog book recommendations for teachers, for children. I glanced at it. The interface is kind of ass, and many of the books are his, so make of it what you will.
Yeah.
Stephen King, this is pretty funny. There's a clip of him on Colbert where he claims facetiously that James Patterson only needs like 6 hours for a draft. There's kind of a friendly, well, I don't know how friendly, rivalry between them. King describes Patterson as a terrible writer but very successful.
I mean, yeah, again, working with one book, I can see that.
Yeah, yeah. No, and Patterson, to his credit, takes it in good stride. I mean, how can you not take it in good stride when you're as successful as he is, you know?
Yeah, like you can't. Why would you get mad about anything if
Yeah,
you're
these
if you're
things
sitting
kind
on that
of
much money?
these things kind of roll off.
Mhm.
So all that to say, in May 2017, it was announced he would be collaborating with Bill Clinton on a thriller, which is this book. And he boasted a level of detail that only a former US president can offer. Do you buy that?
No, not at all. Not remotely. There's nothing. There's nothing in this book that like I didn't buy it going into it, but there's like, I mean, like yeah, there's definitely like moments in this book. I'm like that does sound like an anecdotal, but it no, it does. There's not like wow, I never would have thought it worked like that. Like at any point, like there's no
Well,
like there's no detail that I feel that way about.
well, and like who gives a shit if it's not compelling? But again, we'll get into that.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Or even if it like yeah, I didn't feel like there's nothing in this book that feels like oh wow you really needed a president's perspective to pull that off or like this couldn't have just been made up by some guy.
no,
And I get like there are certain things the president can't like disclose, but then it's like okay, so what's the like value add of the book? uh
exactly, exactly.
Not a lot.
Shall we get into Mr. Clinton?
Bill Clinton, yes, I have got this. I mean, people know Bill Clinton. Hard not to know the first Democrat since FDR to fully serve 2 terms. He was the first Democrat since FDR to do that. That's I didn't even when I read that I was like, is that true? It is true. It's crazy. But no, Bill Clinton, well known, but we'll go over him. Born 1946. And to get into the mindset of a guy like this, capable of doing the acts he's done. Child of a single mother. She was a nurse, but raised by his grandparents who worked as grocers. And then later on, raised by his stepfather who ran a car dealership, was a sort of a slick salesman type and was reportedly pretty abusive. Bill Clinton said himself that he got in multiple like fist fights with his stepfather, but his stepfather also taught him how to make sales. Um,
Did he
went to
win?
yeah, exactly. That's a good question. Um, he went to a Catholic school for a while. And then he was interested later on in music and medicine. He was deciding, do I want to go into music, the old saxophone, or do I want to go into medicine? And then he decides, and he says this is an autobiography, that he realized he would not be the best at music and he could not be the best at medicine. He said, I didn't want to be a professional musician if I couldn't be the next John Coltrane. Basically, like, and he said the same thing with the doctor. He's like, if I'm not going to be the best in my field, then I don't want it. So he said, what's the one thing that I could be better than everyone at? And it's what he calls in his book statescraft, politics. So that, insight into this like deeply insecure from the get-go, like mind, despite all of this. So yeah, went to Georgetown, and then on to Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. He had this whole debacle where he did not want to be in the military during Vietnam, and he sort of tried this conscientious objector angle, but then like sort of hedged it by saying, "Oh, I'll serve if called." But what it's a little unclear. There's controversy around the actual details, but he found a way not to end up going, one way or another. Yale Law after that, where he met Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton, there's debates how much input she actually had, but it was a very big amount. When I say there's input into like his political career, people debate, did she do 70% of it or 100% of it? Like Hillary is definitely like the brains of the two. There's like no doubt.
Oh yeah,
She
100%.
she she's driving. There's an old joke that says they're driving through Arkansas, the two of them, and then Hillary she says, "Oh, that's my old boyfriend pumping gas." And then Bill says, "Wow, I can't imagine. Like, imagine if you'd married him, then you'd be the wife of a gas clerk." And she said, "No, I'd still be the wife of the president. You'd be pumping gas." It's kind of, and there's some truth to that, though. Bill definitely has his own set of skills. Governor of Arkansas in the 1970s. Before that is this Attorney General of Arkansas. a governor of Arkansas in 1979, 1981, again in 83 and 19 to 1992, becomes the president in 1993 after a pretty crazy upset primary win and a pretty crazy upset against Bush Sr., who coming out of Desert Storm was looking really pretty, but made some pretty critical errors. And as we know, served as president till 2001. Bill Clinton was famous for what he called third way politics. He says, I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm center. What that
Some
meant was he was
secret
right.
third thing.
Yeah, secret
Yes,
third thing as means like further right. Like
indeed.
it always does in American politics, economically at the very least. For Bill, there's a lot of ways to put this. Bill Clinton really, to me, represents the nail in the coffin for any sort of like Keynesian strain in the Democratic Party. Any like idea that they were going to bring back FDR or bring back even like Lyndon B. Johnson type of Great Society or New Deal spending programs, that they were going to do Keynesianism, that they were going to have this like partnership with labor that was in any way meaningful. The concept that could be brought back, though like pretty much dead since Jimmy Carter, the idea that American politics had any direction but like neoliberalism is crushed into the dirt by Bill Clinton, and like beyond all recall. Like there's just no conception. Like he really, any part of the party that dissented from that was obliterated by Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is also, I feel like, not I don't feel like, I know he won over a lot of what, like, the moderates, the Reagan Bush one voters who then didn't want to vote for Bush for a second term. He was able to do that, and he brings together this very bizarre coalition, but this coalition that the Democrats have really tried to recapture a lot. But yeah, like I didn't just mention some of his let's say accomplishments, NAFTA, which like terrible for jobs, terrible for everyone involved except the billionaires. Sex scandals galore. The guy was visited by Epstein in the White House 17 times, and flew on his plane at least 26. Personal friend of the guy, and that's on top of accusations. That's on top of course, like the Lewinsky scandal. So there's a whole lot going on with this guy.
Signing into law the notoriously the 1994 crime bill, which greatly
omnibus crime bill.
Yes, which greatly expanded the range of crimes which would secure you the death penalty, and other particularly high punishments. I can't remember
new restrictions on voting rights as well.
Yes, and I can't remember if it was him or Biden who said this at the time, but it was boasted that the bill gave you death for anything but jaywalking. Facetiously, of course, but that comparison doesn't fall out of the sky. It's with him that you really see a massive increase in federal subsidies to state and local police departments for drug arrests, for example. Massive expansion of the war on drugs in the carceral state in general. If you've read Shackled and Chained, if you've read The New Jim Crow, it tells all about this stuff.
Absolutely. Like you said, Butcher of Yugoslavia, 1999, the bombing, in NATO intervention in Yugoslavia, horrific. A lot of his interventions, as always is, but Yugoslavia is, a really particularly disgusting incident. Of course, really set up the Iraq War. Everyone kind of knew it was in the workings, but with his like really intense sanctions that by his own mission led to
he signed into law, lest we forget, I believe it was in 1998, right? The act of Congress that officially shifted our policy toward regime change in Iraq. Yes. So that's what Bush was working from. Bush pulled the trigger, but Clinton primed it, so to speak.
Interestingly enough, despite how much this book moans about the media being so bad, he's responsible for deregulating telecom companies and lowering the barrier of entry for calling yourself news and journalism. So you can just basically allowing organizations to straight up lie. And now in this book, he's like, whatever happened to good old honest journalism? Well, you happened, Bill. You happened. And numerous things that we could go into. Don't ask, don't tell, all manner of things. Of course, very famous for his impeachment that he got away with, and don't really even need to go into that. Everybody sort of knows that story. And since being president, he's sort of been a Democratic Party mainstay. Pushed for Hillary, of course, very hard in both her both her campaigns, 2008 and 2016, of course, to negative effects. Ran the Clinton Foundation, which has its own just all its dirty laundry, plenty of that to speak of. Between its like the stuff it's done with Haiti and like, I mean, you can really get into it. Pretty nasty stuff. Continuously involved with some really like skeezy individuals. But he just kind of hangs around and he gets to be on the ground floor of things. He was big into crypto like a few years ago and made a lot of money on it, and then was nowhere to be found when everything stared collapsing a few months ago.
Invest in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And the thing is, Bill, he's good at making money because the dude has made a ton of money, and like he did bring himself up from, if not nothing, then lower class roots to the heights of power. But of course, his life story shows you how to do that. The way you go from that lower sort of class to this upper class, you have to live the life of someone like Bill Clinton. And there are a few who are willing to do that for good reason, because there's just few humans who can do some of the things he's done. But and chief among his crimes, his contributions to the president is missing.
Yes,
good God.
Perhaps the keystone to his sordid life.
And apparently a sequel that I will not read. Like,
oh, come on.
Gun to my head, maybe, but
come on. Hey,
The President's Daughter.
Yeah, you know what? This is another book where I'll say, okay, you read it, I'll read another Left Behind.
I don't know that we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. But I can't imagine that him write a whole book of these two writing a woman is, oh my God, I can't even imagine.
Yes,
Lord Almighty.
because again, we have mentioned one person who is purportedly good at writing women in this podcast so far, and it is neither of these men.
Mm-hmm. But we can get into this book if we dare. And before we get into it, I'll just say, like your typical Patterson fare, very successful. Sold a lot.
Yeah, and I'll say, as we round the corner into the book itself, I was looking up Patterson's influences that he cites purportedly anyway. So in a 2009 episode of All Things Considered on NPR, he cited postmodern books like The Sotweed Factor by John Barth, Jean Genet's Our Lady of the Flowers, a French novel which Sartre described as an epic of masturbation, transgressive, existentialist, explicitly homosexual, words which I would not use to describe the president as missing, but nevertheless,
it would be more interesting if it was.
It would be more interesting if it was, yes, and that's one I want to track down and read. Also cited is Thomas McGuane's 92 in the Shade as an influence, and if Patterson is talking about the first sentence, which is nobody knows from sea to shining sea why we are having all this trouble with our republic, maybe he has a point. So, but he claims as his greatest influence a 1959 novel by Evan S. Connell called Mrs. Bridge, which is about a white middle-class woman who doesn't really have a lot going on with her life. American society is changing and roiling all around her, and she prefers not to grapple with it. She reacts viscerally to her son using the servant's entrance of her house, for example, because she's forced to think about class. Specifically, he appreciated this book for its short chapters, compactness, and clarity. Right, but again, speaking from a position of ignorance, I think we can see a little bit of that out of touchness in our protagonist as well. Now,
sure.
And final note, as I said earlier, Patterson does more outlining than writing. There's a digital humanities scholar, James O'Sullivan. You, Jacob, actually mentioned him to me.
Yeah.
Has done analyses.
It's a really good analysis.
Yeah. Patterson's books. Yes. He's concluded that generally it's not him doing the writing, but for this one, except for a bit in the beginning, a bit at the end, some of the rising action where Clinton is contributing the prose, for this one, it's all Patterson. So
yeah, the Clinton prose stands out too. You can kind of pick it out.
Yes. So have that in mind.
Lecturing.
Yes. So I don't know.
I will say Bill Clinton's writings before this, mostly memoir kind of stuff. He's written Back to Work, Between Hope and History, Giving, How Each of Us Can Change the World, and My Life, the Clinton autobiography. But there's one more that gets passed over. In fact, it's not even on his Wikipedia page, which is a grave oversight. He also wrote The Tweetable Bill Clinton, Quips, Quotes, and other something. Oh, other one-liners.
Was this
In
before or after 2016?
2021.
Ah, okay. So he knew this was marketable by that time, but he got in a little bit late to that.
Yes, it's a $5 book because it's just 500 life-changing zingers and quotes from your favorite ex-president.
Oh boy.
And it's like a bobblehead of him on the front, but he's credited as the writer of it. And it blew my mind because I saw it and I was like, this can't be real. And it says, "Let Bill Clinton inspire you daily." And I'm like, man, I can't think of anything I'd like less. I really can't.
The coffee table book of coffee table books, truly.
Truly, it's almost as good as I found I'll have to show it to you sometime, a coloring book of Joe Biden, but it's all sexy Joe Biden. I'm not kidding. And it actually, money actually went to the Biden campaign from it.
What is this cottage industry of like I don't think it started with Pride and Prejudice and zombies, but like it's historical figures, it's fictional characters, it's like politicians in like, bizarrely like almost trying too hard, like cool scenarios. Like there's one, I think it's called Hope Rides Alone or something, where it's Biden and Obama that are like super spies.
Yeah, it's like that, or like the campaign really tried to lean into it with like the sunglasses and it's like, man, it's fine. Like, be lame, just do good things. Be like the lamest guy, but of course they can't give us that. But yeah, no, sexy Biden, it is one of the funniest things you'll ever see. But so yeah, that can go right next to the tweetable Bill Clinton. But anyway,
would you say it can Pokemon go right next to tweetable Clinton?
I wouldn't say that, but that's why I'm not the one writing tweetable Bill Clinton. That's why I'm not making the big bucks, $4.99 at a time.
At the time in 2021 dollars, who knows what it'll be.
Yeah, it adds up. Because he really needed the money from that. Wow. Okay. Let's get into this novel. And honestly, like, despite being like a fairly long book, and despite apparently having like all this input from an ex-president, it's not particularly interesting plot wise. It's honestly pretty by the numbers as far as like these sort of action thrillers go. It's pretty standard fare. You've got your main character who is the president. Yeah, he's about to be unfairly impeached. It really opens up with what you think is an impeachment hearing, and it turns out it's just the president practicing for an impeachment hearing. Everybody is being so mean to him, to President Jonathan Lincoln Duncan. And all he ever did was try to protect his country. It would have been if it honestly, I would have respected this book more if it had leaned into full fictionalization, autobiographical. Like, that would have been funnier. But there is something. The character of Jonathan Duncan to me screams like this deep insecurity in like Clinton, because it is like the president is a superhuman. Like, the president is the coolest guy in the entire world in this book. And like, that is like, I feel like if Bill Clinton is helping with the outline of this book, and the fact that it opens with the impeachment definitely screams that to me. It's the president who's being unfairly impeached, who actually did nothing wrong, who's actually a good guy, but he is a hardliner. And also, he played professional baseball, and actually he came from nothing, but also he went to law school, and he was in Desert Storm, and he was the only guy in Desert Storm to get tortured, but to not betray the country. And also, he has like this disease, and it makes him so weak and sad, but not really, because he can actually fight off assassins when he needs to. And also, like, he's got the best relationship ever with his family, but he's so troubled, but not in a way that affects him at all. And really, he's just got the best policies on everything. And real Clintonism has never been tried.
Yeah, I was surprised that the blood disease that he has doesn't really play as much of a role in it as we thought.
Added fake tension.
Yeah, like, and again, you have the power fantasy aspect of it. You also, I mean, it wouldn't be written if Patterson is an advertiser by trade,
Right.
it wouldn't be written if he didn't think there were a market for it. So,
Oh, there's a market for it, no doubt.
exactly,
I got it
and
from the
it's,
library. I didn't spend a dime on this thing, but
oh
there's a
yeah, no,
market
same
for it.
thing. No, it's and if I can credit this book at least partially with anything, it's reawakened me to the wonder of your local library. Like, because
Oh
I'm a,
yeah.
yeah, I hadn't set foot in the library in quite a while.
And Libby is great too if you want that app
Yes,
right on your
yes,
phone.
absolutely. Download that, people.
Yeah. We're
Yeah,
not getting
so
sponsored by Libby, but we would take a sponsorship from Libby. Wouldn't take a sponsorship from many people, but if the Library System of America wants to sponsor us, we will. We
I
will
do it
take
for
it.
free,
Yeah. No, no, no,
Yeah,
pay us.
yeah. So yeah, I can't speak to the purpose of this novel per se, one way or another, but it fulfills a very specific niche, right? A
Yes.
vision of what the office of American president ought to be in
Yes.
the eyes
It's
of
like
people
West Wing
who
watchers, I
ordinarily
think.
respect it. Yes, exactly. It's very Sorkin-esque.
Hmm.
We of course are socialists. We do not respect this office. We believe in its abolition, even within this idealized universe. Because even within this idealized universe, this president is an action hero who faces down gunmen with steely, flinty determination through all manner of personal trials. And he's also, as we'll see, exactly the arch chancellor of empire that the real president is. He's, as you say, Clinton with this unrepentant military background.
Yeah, Clinton and baseball. The baseball is a
Yes.
funny addition that barely, again, not important, but it's just there because he's the coolest guy ever. But no, you're
Yes.
exactly right. Even within this, like if we accept the premise of this book, he's still a bad guy. That's the funny thing. Like even within this world, within this like fantasy universe he's created, where he does feel bad for the drone strikes, he still does the drone strike.
Yes. Yes.
Literally, I'm not making that up. It sounds like something I would parody. Like I would say is a parody of a liberal writing a book. Y'all, I'm not kidding. It has a scene where he feels guilty about doing a drone strike because it'll kill children.
Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah. That's we'll get to that.
We'll
But
get to it. I'm sorry.
holy.
I'm hopping around here. Josh, why
Oh
don't you take
yes.
us to some plot here? Because
No,
I'm frenetic here.
no apology is necessary, because this is awakening feelings in front of us within us that we're still struggling to parse and comprehend
Just didn't
truly.
even. Yeah.
So let's get into the why of his impending impeachment. So
Because he
this
was too good of a president.
so from yeah well, we'll see, right? Because
Yeah.
so right from the jump, right, the geopolitics of this are really weird. Um there's this guy, Solomon Chindoruk, and he is a
Hmm.
Turkish terrorist who is fighting Western influence in the Mediterranean.
Hmm.
And Jonathan Lincoln Duncan, President Duncan stands accused of sending American forces to save Chindoruk. So we're like, okay, is he an American asset? And what he's saving Chindoruk from is this pro-Ukrainian, anti-Russian militia. And remember, this was written after 2014, by the way, after the coup that the United States sponsored in that
But
country.
before the war,
Yes,
certainly
before
though.
the invasion, certainly. Now he introduces a whole lot of characters here. I took notes on them, and I really shouldn't have bothered because half of them don't really show up again.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but
nice thing about
yes,
reading this on an ebook was being able to search the names of the characters in other places when I needed to, because like I didn't remember half these people.
a godsend, truly. Like
Hmm.
if there is one advantage that ebooks have over the genuine article, not that one will ever supplant the other, but yes. So Solomon Chindoruk is what the book terms a secular extreme nationalist. So Duncan takes great care to nip the Islamophobia in the bud. Of course, he
Yeah, Bill Clinton would never.
yeah, exactly. He again, does he preside over a regime that has materially a similar devastating impact on the Muslim world? Whether no matter how he describes it, yes. But again, that's not the point. The point is that the president has been revealed to have used an American special forces team to bail out Chindoruk from this attempted assassination. Le Monde, the French newspaper, has leaked details of a phone call between Duncan and Chindoruk, so that's what he's under fire for. So it goes into that. He rehearses the impeachment, and he's really, again, this is where it gets into some of my quote unquote favorite elements of this book, right? Because I think it's very clear that there's certain lines that that Patterson started with and then kind of worked backward to construct the scene around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in one of the first few chapters, when he's wrapping up the impeachment practice, I'm paraphrasing here. It says something along the lines of, he wasn't concerned about Monday's impeachment. He was concerned about whether there would be a country by Monday. Just the most spooky stuff, truly.
Another example of how we could make this better. It'd be really funny if that was like, it wasn't like there was a threat. He's just really paranoid. I when I read it, I was like, it would be really funny if this guy thought that like every day. He was like, I'm not worried about that.
And to a degree, that's actually kind of true.
Yeah,
as we'll get into. So yes, there's this impeachment rehearsal. And then we get into chapter 3. And chapter 3 introduces, we've had like a dozen named characters by this point. And chapter 3 introduces Bach.
Everyone's favorite character.
Yes, this sexy redheaded assassin who has a pet gun named Anna Magdalena. And she's called Bach, like that's her code name, because she really likes Bach.
She likes classical music, yeah.
Yes, and she listens to it while she's embarking on her assassination missions, which she's the best at. She's implied to be from some war-torn Balkan country. She's half Bosnian. Again, not really important right now, not really important in general to the story as it happens.
I also, just an example of, like, we were joking about the writing women. I like right off the bat, it's like she's like, I can't be noticed, but then it says she's intentionally being memorable. It literally says she's talking about how she cannot be noticed getting off this plane, but then she says, literally a paragraph after that, it says, the men try for eye contact, checking the cleavage she's made sure to reveal, allowing just enough bounce in her girls to make it memorable. Why would that? Doesn't make sense. Like, it just said she wasn't trying to be memorable. And again, later on, it says again, one paragraph later, like 3 sentences, she will be memorable, no doubt. The tall, leggy, busty redhead hiding in plain sight. Like, it said twice, I don't want to be noticed. And then twice, I'm trying to be memorable, no doubt. Because they like couldn't stop, like they were trying to write a woman and they're like, their brains short circuited. Like, it really is, it's pretty sad. I'm not gonna lie. It's rough. That's the first page she appears on.
You could make some argument about hiding in plain sight, but
it's just like in the whole thing.
Girls, truly.
Yeah. Great stuff, y'all. Top tier.
I said his staff wasn't too important. There is a character that does recur, and her name is Carolyn Brock. And initially, I thought of her. Clinton. Yes, initially I thought of her as like AOC, but more cynical. But she's described as like this progressive politician that scored this upset against this longtime fixture in her local politics, right? Very successful at climbing, but ultimately her career was cut short when she was caught on a hot mic calling a political opponent a cocksucker. Yeah, and then from then on, she's always the bridesmaid, never the bride, right? And so she's discussing at this point damage control, basically for the upcoming impeachment, right? She's discussing legislation that they can float to sort of take the oxygen out of the room, and she's like, okay, we'll fight back against this political opponent of ours, Senate Minority Leader Lawrence Gordon. He's not part of the Republicans. He's part of the Democrats, but he's a conservative Democrat. Essentially, he's Joe Manchin by a different name. Yeah. And she's like, okay, we'll float minimum wage, or we'll float an assault weapons ban. We make Gordon come to us, ask us to sit on them, and then he owes us, right? So it's right off the bat, it's the ridiculous like West Wing influence peddling, like, okay, we'll make this particular sacrifice right away instead of pushing for our stated agenda with all the executive power that we have.
And that's why we can't do things.
Oh,
because of that.
Well, and it's this book really hasn't aged well, because we've seen the result of that sort of politics, trying to appease the most conservative member of your party, so quote unquote they owe you later. Who's proof positive that this is nonsense? Kirsten Sinema,
Mm-hmm.
who left the Democratic Party and went independent to build her own brand. Presumably she owes Dems for their abject refusal to pressure her on the eviction moratorium or the minimum wage, anything that matters to working class Americans. But they're doing this. They're discussing promulgating their agenda in this way because again, this particular line that I feel like was percolating in Patterson's head. It's the right thing to do, and win or lose, we'll be strong and they'll be wrong.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that sort of reasoning is fine if you're trying to draw people into a political project to build institutional power, to overthrow it even. These people already have institutional power. Getting caught doing the right thing means attempting to do the right thing, not waiting until some force of nature sabotages.
When you're the president, it's just very sad to be saying that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then it gets into like, after that, then he's got more politicking to do with Newt Gingrich. I mean, Lester Rhodes. With what's his name? It's Lester Rhodes, right? The
Lester Rhodes,
Speaker of the House. It's like Newt Gingrich, basically. Like,
and credit where it's due. There was a kind of evocative element to his speech. I imagined him as well, you know what? No, not this wasn't particularly intelligent of Patterson because his characters were just such naked expies of existing people. What's his name? Mitch McConnell, fucking
right.
turtle dude. Yes, this is Mitch McConnell.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason I say Gingrich is just because that's the guy that was impeaching Clinton in this exact same role. But like McConnell works just as well.
For sure. Yes.
It's that type. It's the conservative leader who doesn't actually believe it, and everyone knows he doesn't actually believe it. And in this, like in the universe of this book, there's like a moral. There's like you get like some kind of moral karmic points for like calling them on it, basically.
Yes.
Like, but. And the president is like the cool guy for calling him out on it. But like, nevertheless, yeah, he's just like, yeah, like, I don't care about national security. I don't care about whatever. And he's like, I have my agenda. You have yours. I'm going to keep impeaching you, even if it kills everyone, which like, fair enough. That's not a thing that they wouldn't do necessarily. But, like you're saying, this isn't, it doesn't say a lot about our society,
And by the way, it should be noted, I don't think I don't have the text right in front of me to control F. I don't think the word Republican or Democrat, either word, I don't think appears in the text at all.
I don't recall that either.
The
conservative and liberal, right and left, those appear.
Yeah, but, and there's like dog whistles about about various political stances and various like personalities and whatnot. So you can read between the lines, but it's you get a sense of it trying to be above it all, right? Above that kind of divide. Like, oh, can't we just get along? It's much more than about the personalities involved than the actual politics or any sort of like analysis of their class position. But anyway.
And like, just to note that like 2018 is so late to be writing a can't we all just get along? Mm-hmm. Like, not that it's ever been smart, but like really, like after Trump, you're still writing this like sob story, like, oh, we're gonna have common sense middle ground. Like, no, it's over, dude. It never existed, but like it's never been more over than it is right now.
Yes. So to move forward, he has a secret meeting the president does with his primary opponent, the House Minority Leader Lester Rhodes, and he confides in Lester Rhodes, look, I was trying to capture Chindorik from Ukrainians that were trying to kill him because I have a hunch. And this hunch is that Chindorik knows about this cyber attack that took place recently in Toronto. We think it's practice for something bigger. And he offers his political enemy the speaker job for life if he'll back down from his sort of witch hunt. I think he actually uses the term witch hunt.
Yes, he does.
Yes. And of course, Rhodes shoots him down. It's this team of rivals tendency that Duncan has, because he appoints political rivals to positions of power.
Yeah, vice presidency and his chief of staff, notably.
Yeah, yeah. His secretary is a Republican. His chief of staff. I mean, essentially, if he's meant to be. I mean, the analogy here is if well, not if. The analogy here is Barack Obama making Clinton his Secretary of State.
Well, that and also just Bill Clinton as presidency, the concept of the third way.
Yes.
And that very much is at play here too. But yeah,
Mhm.
that the team of rivals is absolutely is the the uh the vice president being the political opponent in the primary that should have won basically. Like that couldn't be more clear. Yeah.
Mhm.
A more
Mhm.
clear reference. And her not actually being the bad guy, also a pretty clear point.
Yeah. There's I don't want to get into the like chapter by chapter of it because there's a lot of setup in the first like
We don't have to
quarter
get
to a
into
third of the
everything.
book.
I'm not, yeah. You don't have to. I don't think we have to feel compelled to go through like every bit of detail here.
Hmm.
Because a lot of it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't really pay off or like really mean anything. I think it's like really like, oh, we want to talk about this, and oh yeah, drone strikes, that's the thing, and oh yeah, media, we should talk about that. We should throw in this. Oh, also the president is sad about his dead wife. Let's throw in
Hmm.
that. And it's like, oh, and then like we were saying, he has a health condition. That's important. That's in the first few chapters. And we mentioned that already, but he has what is it? It's a blood condition basically
Oh, I
where
wrote it down. Immune thrombocytopenia.
yes. So he's dealing with that. And it basically means that like if he gets like hurt, it could be really bad. He like bruises very easily, only very recently, and also he like is feeling very weak. And so what he needs is like a blood infusion or in some kind of treatment, but he's just staving that off with steroids because now is just simply not the time. And should we just go ahead and get into why now is simply not the time? Like, because we kind of danced around at this terrorist attack. We want to just
Yes, yes, and I'll note as well.
and we don't have to reveal everything in the order the book reveals it. I don't think
Right.
that's really that necessary.
Well, it's chapter 5, I'll note, just as one more aside, where it mentions that his hematologist, whose name is not important, fled apartheid South Africa to take the job that she took. Which, notably, the United States supported that regime right up until it was no longer politically expedient to.
Yeah.
It's this tendency that this book has to stumble ass first into things that the United States directly had a hand in exacerbating.
The Saudi Arabia thing, especially notable, though we'll
Oh,
get
we
into
should talk
that.
about the Saudi Arabia thing. Like fucking so in the chapter 10 actually does a lot of heavy lifting in the geopolitics of it all. We meet our CIA director, Erica Beatty, who was captured by the Stasi in East Germany and tortured at one point and rose to
Hmm.
her career from that. Um, the we get a little bit of what the United States is up to in Latin America. It's mentioned that there's this fascist in Honduras that we don't necessarily like, but we got to support him because we've caught wind of oh boy, Russians are trying to install a puppet in Honduras.
Those Russians and their meddling.
Yes, yes, how dare they overthrow our fascists? Yes, it's this ludicrous mentality that the book traffics in, where instead of acknowledging the unique political economy of America's imperialism or, considering that states act in their respective interests, one assumes all countries to be acted on by the United States and its rivals,
Hmm.
who in this conception of the world are equally threatening, the greater of all evils, if American exceptionalists want to pretend nuance, it's you see this thinking on display when countries in Africa decide they like trading with China better than with the United States, right? And instead of any kind of introspection about the relative benefits of one another, our pundits and our officials pretend to be concerned. Oh, this other country is trapping these African countries who don't know the danger that they're putting themselves in. It's I like to call it modern day geocentrism, right? That everything revolves around America, right? Um,
And the last notable thing geopolitically here is that there was a transition of power inside Saudi Arabia, and it's led to a bit of a power struggle. There's a new king now, but he's got like some like rivals in his family who may be up to no good, and indeed are up to no good.
yes,
But
yes,
notably not the people we back, just the splinters group, which
a
like
new guy
notably,
who is, of course, obviously Mohammed bin Salman.
yeah, and notably, I don't know if it's supposed to be a direct callback, but it feels like a callback. This like Saudi splinter group that we have quote unquote nothing to do with, being, this like relationship to things like 9/11 or whatever.
Mm.
There's definitely like a 9/11 like vibe to like this terror attack in this book, not just because all terror attacks kind of have to be held up to that standard, but also the idea of it being this Saudi group that like, yeah, maybe we've trafficked with in the past, but we didn't actually work with these guys particularly. So you can't think, if you think too hard about our role in it, yeah, maybe that we should have like been more careful, but like we didn't specifically order this, so it feels it's like weird because like you could almost call it a stand-in, but like you can't say they weren't thinking about 9/11 because like you can't not think about 9/11 when you talk about a Saudi terror attack. Like
Right.
it's a very weird line it walks. And to speak of the terror attack specifically, it is and we touched on it, it's going to be this massive cyber attack that they call codenamed Dark Ages.
Ooh.
And it's gonna knock them back to the Dark Ages, baby. I mean, it really is. It's just this super duper computer virus that they really can't do anything about. The nation's infrastructure can't hold up against it, and it's going to do everything. It's going to delete all the money. It's going to wipe everything, destroy the internet. It's going to do all the things. It's going to send the United States plummeting into the Dark Ages. Potentially, any number of things could come out of that. So it's a big deal. Lots of people will die. It's going to be very, very, very bad. And the president knows his team has no capacity to stop this thing. They can't, no matter what they do, they can't figure out how to stop it. There's only one hope here, only one hope of stopping it. And that is a mysterious message passed on to him by his daughter, who says codename Dark Ages, which means two things. One, there's someone who's trying to help them stop this thing or is interested in meeting with the president. And two, the president has someone who betrayed him in his inner circle, because only 8 people knew codename Dark Ages. So the fact that it got out means it got out to someone else. And those people it got out to are named Nina and Augie, right? It's Augie. Is that right?
It is Augie. Yes. Yes.
And they're basically former terrorists who are like angry at the US for doing war crimes. And they decided they didn't want to like lead to the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. And so they're like doing this last minute defection, but they're very, for understandable reason, pretty nervous about pulling this whole thing.
Yes. And so the president to this end has this secret meeting with the person who has passed him the code word through his daughter. This person named.
Well, before he does that, though, he has to get a disguise and spend some time with his supermodel or actress friend who's not really relevant to the plot, except
this was so weird.
While he's with her, it notes she's on the list of sexiest women alive. She's his wife's former best friend, or not. I mean, his wife's dead. His dead wife's best friend, and she mentions multiple times, and he mentions multiple times, I really ought to get back in the dating field. One of the last things my wife said was, I need to be with people again. And it didn't really it didn't go anywhere. It didn't mean anything. It just was like, oh wow, this really hot actress wants the president because he's just so. It's just another way. Like it's. You'd think that like Bill Clinton, having been the most powerful man in the world, being a multi-millionaire and like a kingpin in every respect, wouldn't need like this weird self-insert fan fiction. And yet here we are.
God, it's so bizarre. So okay, so you back up a bit, right? So it flashes back to where he met his wife, right? To establish, how important his wife was to him. The point in their lives where they met in law school, of course.
Yeah.
I can't remember precisely whether he hadn't done the reading or whether he just,
he had dip in his mouth.
Yes.
And he wasn't paying attention.
Here's the thing. This book really likes his fucking product placement. He loves Copenhagen tobacco.
Big fan of Copenhagen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
advertiser.
He meets his wife in law school after he blows a question, and she proceeds to get it right.
And reads her a poem.
It's this. He goes up to her in front of her friends in the library while they're studying, and he reads her a poem. It's this weird, like mutually like humiliating ritual that I can only assume is going to die with the boomers. Like, because I can't imagine a real person doing this shit, let alone it working.
It's like I'm not. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about this thing. Like it's just a weird. It's another scene that it's like what are we doing this for? Because it doesn't really inform us on the character. Because like we're not really learning anything about the president here. Because the president is just like good guy. Like
Well,
he's
you know,
not really got much to him. Sorry, go ahead.
no, but you're absolutely right. Like it's in that vein, right? It's supposed to be like, oh, you know, this guy's endearing, and he's willing to humble himself, you know. But I mean, here, dear listeners, just I mean, don't actually try this, but just try this. You know, write a poem and then just go up to somebody that you like and read it in front of them. Do it in a place where you're expected to be quiet too, perhaps a funeral. You know,
Yeah, yeah. And then at the end, notably do an Elvis impression and say thank you very much, and then walk away.
yeah, and you know, credit
What?
where it's to be fair, like Elvis is back in the public consciousness with the movie now, but you know,
I mean, it just really just really deeply bizarre.
but not as bizarre as his rendezvous with his wife's friend. Of course, his wife's
Yeah.
dead by that point, and
Where
you
and
know,
he gets up next to her and he says the smell of a woman.
this
Uh,
yes, the smell of yeah, you know that familiar woman smell. We know
you
you know
know,
what we're talking about.
woman smell, famous.
I mean, you know,
He
y'all
describes
know
it
what
as
we're
like
talking about,
vanilla.
and perhaps you can explain it to us because we sure don't.
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
yes, so you know, Amanda Braidwood is this actress's
We're not
name.
alphas like this guy.
Yeah, yeah, not Sigmas clearly.
Uh-huh.
Um, so yeah, she's wearing the perfume that his dead wife wore. They're catching up, and he's meeting her by the way because she's disguising him, you know, with the Clark Kent sort of disguise where you change like small things about yourself that actually punch well above their weight in terms of how much they disguise you. Like she changes his eyebrows, I think.
Yeah, and he
Um,
grows out a goatee.
she casually mentions that she was sexually harassed on the set of her last film that she acted in, which is a bizarre fucking thing to gloss over.
Yeah, just
Um,
like a thing to decide to put in there.
yeah, yeah, and
Well, Bill Clinton's known for glossing over sexual harassment, though.
oh,
So,
indeed, you know, write
yeah.
what you know again.
Uh,
But yeah, so it's she's got his dead wife's perfume, and she mentions, you know, that she's aware that the wife confided to her that look, you know, if I die from this horrible disease that I have, I don't want my husband to keep holding a torch for me out of some misplaced sense of loyalty. That's the phrase that she uses. By the way, this character is never seen again.
yeah, just worth noting that the president hangs out with hot babes, I guess. I don't know. Like, very weird. Very weird. Like, I can't think of any other reason that she's in the novel. Like, she doesn't. Oh my God. Like, I thought there would be something. Like, she would get kidnapped or something. No, just like if you read a synopsis of the book, like which I did because I was like trying to remember what the hell I read. She's not even mentioned, and like for good reason, because you don't, well, for what purpose?
Yeah, yeah, and then it gets oh god. And then it gets back to chapter 19. Chapter 19 is after he's all dressed up, right? You know, he's
Hmm.
incognito and he's going to visit his daughter at a bar that they've agreed to rendezvous at.
The president's daughter.
The you know, let's not jump to conclusions. But yes, no, so it's chapter 19 is the first sort of extended musing bit, as I like to think of it as. Where the president just talks directly to the screen about politics and you know what he thinks of it and his position in all this as you know the most powerful man in the country. Um, you know, he helps a homeless Gulf War veteran, which you know in isolation, nice thing to do, but I mean. When you're president of a country with more housing than homeless people, and that country still has homeless people, I mean, it just reads like buying an indulgence.
Hmm.
He witnesses police apprehending an unarmed black man whom he describes variously as a man and a kid, which is the sort of ambiguity that people use to justify the use of disproportionate and brutal and illegal force.
And he does
Um,
a whole thing where he's like, they're probably good cops. 99% of them are, but like, it just the weird, just the weird. Like, just it's just like weird him walking around doing centrisms. It's very strange. It's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
strange indeed.
yeah.
I will say, I think chapter 8 is the first time I would say that he does the talk at the screen thing, where
When
he
he
does his
does,
bit
what's
on
he
the free
talking about?
press. The free
Oh
press.
yes, God,
We
I
can't
glossed
survive
over.
without a free press dedicated to preserving the fine line, secure enough to follow the facts where they lead. And then it goes on and on. But like, yeah,
And
I get that part you're noting there is probably the second most odious part in the book, though,
and dear
behind the
listeners,
speech at the end.
I will gloss over many a thing because again, this prose, like I would call it pedestrian if I thought it had any legs at all with which to walk. You know,
There we go.
it's eminently glossable, eminently skimmable. Like it's when it's memorable for the wrong reasons. Or are they the right reasons? We'll see. We'll
It's
see.
worth noting that like also the book will pause to do this, right? He will be in the middle of like a conversation or a scene, and then it will just stop and it will be like, and I'm quoting this. Some days my side isn't much better. Participation in our democracy seems to be driven by instant gratification, worlds of Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, and the 24-hour news cycle. We're using modern technology to revert to primitive kinds of human relations. The media knows what sells, conflict and division. This goes on for paragraphs before it gets back to the president doing things. I'm like literally have to scroll to get back to where to plot. Like it just skipping paragraphs and it's just going, scholars call this false equivalency. It means that when you find a mountain to expose one person or party, you have to pick a molehill on the other. It is just lecturing you in this embarrassing way that
It's Patterson trying to
so
do
bad.
Hugo and failing.
It's so bad. And it's like also not making good points either.
Hmm.
Like it would be bad if it was making good points, but it's not. It's making
Hmm.
stupid points. Like maybe some of it's true, but like in the context in which it's delivered, it's moronic. Uh, yeah. So anyway, you can go on with the plot, but I'm just like, I feel like that's important for context of like, even it's like it can be interrupted at any moment by a diatribe to make you either feel bad or feel like you're a good person for reading it.
I would
And
literally rather
yeah,
read the part of Les Miserables again where Victor Hugo digresses from the story for 28 pages about like the Parisian sewers because at least he manages to make that interesting.
yeah, it goes somewhere, you know. There's something about it. This is just, oh my God. And also, I will say like the prose itself is pretty tiresome as well. But the fact that it can divert at any moment into like basically like a Politico opinion piece
Yeah.
is really just it's uniquely evil. Anyway,
Yeah,
baseball game,
so
right?
he goes to, and this stood out as pretty funny to me. So he drives from one paid parking space to another. You know, he stresses the fact that, you know, he pays for parking at the bar, he pays for parking in the Mets v Nationals game. You know, so this book is unintentionally making the case for public transit. A.
There you go.
But then he goes to the baseball game, as you say, and he I lifted the sentence directly from the narrative here. I'd grab a Budweiser and a hot dog. You can shelve all those microbrews. At a ball game, there is no finer beverage than an ice cold Bud. Truly, truly, just not even hiding it.
Go to hell, James Patterson, with this. He's an advertiser. He's an advertiser for life, you know, like he,
It must be a reflex, truly, you know.
if it was a Bud Light, then I'd be worried. But no,
Hmm.
I'm just kidding. And around, if you're listening to this around the time, this is apparently still a controversy.
I'm sure I'll develop similar reflexes once I write enough furry porn.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so he meets with Augie, right? At
Augie, yes.
the
What's
ballpark, who's
this?
like this nervous Eastern European guy. Um,
Yes, Augustus Koslenko is his
it's
full
a good
name.
good name. It's a solid name.
Hmm.
And Augie is you know, like we said before, he was one of the two terrorist computer hackers, very smart guy, and he's here at the game and he's very, you know, nervous and twitchy, and he's here to meet with the president to talk about, well, how can we shut this thing down? And he's like, I'm going to get you to a different location. And you have this back and forth where the president's like threatening him, even though Augie has a gun on him for a minute. And then they're like going outside, and that's when the assassins strike. But the real target is not the president primarily. It's Augie and his partner, the woman. What's her name?
Nina,
Nina.
she just get ice right away.
Yeah, Bach just takes her out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Bach, who we find out by this time is pregnant.
yeah, yeah. Bach, who is pregnant,
Coolest
absolutely.
mom in the world.
There you go. Yeah, now we can get like a Bach miniseries out of this. Maybe we'll have something.
I
Uh,
thought so at first. She was the only like mildly interesting character in the entire book to me.
yeah, but like also like she kind of sucks. Like she's not interesting either,
Oh,
though.
I mean, yes, yes.
It's
It's the tallest dwarf, truly.
yeah, there's not much to like. There's not much to her. She's a femme fatale who listens to Bach, and she calls herself Bach.
This by the way, like it really gets into the element of the book that I found very excruciating here, which is the pacing.
Uh-huh.
Because it's the point in my notes where my notes just started being like 4 words long, and and the the chapter breaks are fast and they are hard, and there are several of them like within the same scene,
Mhm.
within the same conversation, like
Not
chapter.
stylistically interesting
No,
either. Like
yes, yes,
not like
yes.
some kind of interesting game with form. Just like, yeah, cut it there.
Yeah, there's like
It's
this
edited like
one
an episode of Shark Tank.
this one scene from getting to the ball game, to having the conversation with Augie, to something fucking happening, is like 11 or 12 chapters.
Hmm.
God,
I was saying it's like edited like Shark Tank or another reality show where there's just so many cuts for fake tension.
oh
Like
yeah.
that is a thing. And like that's a more effective, it's a cheap tool when you do it visually, but it is more effective visually. When you
It's
do it in a
the
book, it works like the first two times.
it's the literary equivalent, truly, of that scene from, I think it was one of the Taken films, where Liam Neeson's like jumping over a fence, and of course he's old, so like it has to cut like 30 times.
Hmm.
Hmm.
It's very rough. And then like, yeah, but then you have this like whole moment where there's like the lights go out and there's a shootout. And then of course you have President Rambo fight off these like the greatest trained assassins that money
Oh
could
yes,
buy.
yes, he returns fire, doesn't he?
He shoots two of them while suffering from, he's like his blood count is like low and he's still like fighting them off. It's doing its whole like silly thing. Like again, I couldn't like this, it reads like a parody, but it's not. You're supposed to take it seriously. But he's like shooting back and he's like, I've never shot a Glock before. It's
Hmm.
like driving a car. But what was it? He's like, it's like driving a car. It's basically the same, but you got to get to know its individual. And it's like, man, leave me alone. Like this is so bad. And then it has this like it has this chase scene. Like the Secret Service shows up because they followed him against his will. But they save his life, and then there's this like whole chase scene, and there's like a gunfight, and a couple Secret Service agents die, and it makes you like do a whole thing where it's like hats off. They had families. Like it did this. It has to like multiple times through the book call back to that. Um,
Yes, there's this whole musing on the Secret Service, and how, like, they do all their best work in the dark, and nobody ever hears about them doing their job right, only when it goes wrong. This, by the way, is in the wake of many, many, many scandals involving the Secret Service. You got drunk driving, you got prostitution, you got like grievous security lapses, you got child sexual exploitation scandals.
I will
Um,
say Bill Clinton probably does. I mean, like Bill Clinton was his life was saved by the Secret Service from that one assassination attempt on him. I forget where it was, but it was like a pretty close to effective assassination. Oh, the Philippines in 1996.
oh
Al
wow,
Qaeda tried to kill him, and uh,
forgot about that.
it remained a secret for a while, but yeah, Al Qaeda tried to take him out in the Philippines in '96, and
Damn.
he survived, and Secret Service is credited with saving him. So like maybe it's Bill trying to do his due diligence, like, hey, these guys saved my life, and it was a secret for many years. The attack happened.
Hmm.
So like my best guess is that's like some kind of callback to that. Like they do their best work in the dark, and nobody knows when they do a good job. Uh, I'm again, like, but it really does. It goes back to it's like very like respecting the troops, respecting the police kind of stuff, like which is like, whatever, that's like standard fare for this kind of thing. But like it like really wants you to like be really sad about these two guys getting shot that we like didn't know the names of. And like feel the moral weight and responsibility and like some kind of and in a
I don't think we even get first names.
Yeah, I don't think so. In a like subpar gunfight scene, like it's just, and then the president drives an armored car away from the scene. It's like burning on the back. The president who hasn't driven a car in years, by the way.
Oh yeah, he did talk about that.
Just, I mean, it's like I just kept like reading this part, like okay, okay, okay. Like the action, it's like you'd think the action scene would be like a break from the monotony, and it's just it simply isn't.
It's very foggy. It's
Yeah,
hard to visualize.
but again, not in an interesting way, not in fog
Yeah.
of war kind of way. Like,
No, yeah, the viscerality of it is totally not there.
yeah, it's just nothing. It's like it reads a little bit like they thought they were going to get a film adaptation, which they didn't. There was a failed film adaptation. It reads like script notes that went way too long. I don't really know how else to put it. There's just not much here.
Mm-hmm. And yeah. So it's not a terribly interesting. Even when something does happen, right? There's not a whole lot happening, right? So they go. There's this truck attack that they fend off on a bridge.
And they go to the Blue House.
The Blue House, yes, where lives Carolyn Brock and her husband, Greg Morton. Morty is. I'm glad he's described as a baritone specifically, because otherwise, I would constantly in my head be hearing, "Oh, geez, Mr. President."
Yeah, that would have been actually interesting.
Morty, we gotta figure out this the cyber terrorism. Morty, they're Turkish, but they're not they're secular terrorists. Morty, don't be Islamophobic.
That's pretty good. That's not bad. Pretty solid.
If you can do one, you can do the other.
Hey, I hear I hear they need a new voice actor. So
truly,
for that show.
Yes, dating ourselves here.
Uh,
So yes, he's calling Carolyn now from the Blue House's Situation Room. We get our first proper look at FBI Director Liz Greenfield, which truly, like in that sort of tone deafness that you really only see in this sort of book. The FBI Director is black, which
and it makes note of it too. Like it makes note of it as like a political accomplishment of his for appointing.
Yes. No dwelling at all on the role of the FBI in infiltrating and disrupting the Black liberation movement in this country. It's just it's you're taking a box. You're taking a box.
And it's like really proud of itself. It's so weird and. Just the way, and again, she's like a non-character too. It's like no one in this book is like particularly interesting, but like it just you felt like you said ticking a box. Like I do genuinely think they had like a spreadsheet in front of them. Like they're just trying to like get through things. It feels it's this part of the book too is like where I really like had a lot of trouble continuing to read it, not because it necessarily worse. But like I just was like so burnt out on this book when I got to like the Blue House and everything after it. Like so like it just like I think my brain was like melting more and more. Like I think the last thing I remember like super clearly is the last thing I felt like I was paying really close attention to. But like not to say that I didn't read the rest, but it's just like man, it really like it just at this point you have really been just beaten over the head with whatever this is supposed to be.
Yes. And, again, speaking of non-characters, here comes a meeting with David Goralnik.
Yeah, everyone's favorite guy.
Yes, the director of Mossad, everybody's favorite guy. And that's where we get
my favorite scene.
Yes, and that's where we get our first proper ID on Augie, his full name, Augustus Koslenko. He's 22 years old. He's from Donetsk, which is a real happening place at time of recording. He's a math genius. He went to boarding school in Turkey. He somehow got radicalized there. It's your favorite scene, you say?
Yeah, it's very funny to me. Because they're sitting around like trying to figure out who's like doing the terrorism. Where it says David Goralnik, the director of Israel's Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations, Mossad, takes a deep breath. For dramatic measure, the screen cuts in and out before his face becomes clear again. Our best guess is Russia, he says.
God.
and then the chapter ends, and I think that like sums up the like action part of this book the best, like the thriller side of this political thriller. Um, it's just all like that. And it's just like it really like expects the it already knows its audience. Like we said, James Patterson
Yes.
knows his audience, and he knows it's 2018. It's a 2018 liberal. They hear Russia and they just basically faint.
The height of Russiagate hysteria,
Yes.
truly.
Which the book directly references, even though it doesn't make sense historically, because this is a timeline where Donald Trump was not elected president.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Uh,
That'll.
and it's not really important, but like it is like a thing. It's again checking boxes, but it's just like our best guess is Russia, and we're all supposed to just like absolutely lose our minds, like as like at like Thanos showing up in the end credit scene of the Avengers, the bad guy emerging from the shadows, as if it was ever not gonna be Russia. Like I'm
Mhm.
as if it was ever not gonna be Russia or China. They were the
Yeah.
only two bad guys it could have been if there was a state actor. Like it's with like some terrorist go-betweens. It was always going to be that. Anyone who thought otherwise wasn't paying attention, hasn't made it like it doesn't. This is just if they have one playbook, this is how they write things. It's not interesting, it's not meaningful. And it's not true. Like they are really like just trying to create this narrative of like being besieged in a way that is just like counterfactual. Like it
It's
even throws in like,
truly.
oh, China was actually trying to cause gas explosions in 2011. Just making stuff up
It's
throughout this entire book.
truly like, it's your classic reactionary thinking that you're, as you say, besieged on all sides by these implacable enemies that are simultaneously, backwards, degenerate, any number of any number of bad names. And yes, one false move and they'll overrun you.
Yes, the hordes, the Mongolian hordes, or whatever weird thing they're going to use.
Oh,
Like whatever
yes.
weird like whatever weird thing today they're going to use to compare like Russia to, because I remember them doing that if like last year, like getting like weirdly specific with their like Mongol comparison and Genghis Khan and stuff. I'm referencing that like Time magazine article, but
Oh God.
really bad. But like that it is really what they do. And honestly, like I can draw it a little more later, but there are like some direct parallels here to Left Behind, pretty obviously.
Oh yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
pointed it out in the text. I mean, like they somehow horseshoe theory their way, horseshoe theory, dumb as it is, coming through here when it's liberals and conservatives, because fundamentally they're the same in a lot of ways. Um, but I was joking. True horseshoe theory is them coming to the same conclusions that Russia and Islamic terrorists are in cahoots because reasons.
Hmm.
And it's funny that both these books have that same premise and have about the same amount of depth as the reasoning for like this attack, which is just because they're bad guys.
And I'm glad you pointed
Yeah.
out I'm glad you pointed out the shallowness of the reasoning here, that goes
Mhm.
into this conspiracy, because they're trying to puzzle out who exactly we didn't even mention the name of the terrorist group. They're called the Sons of Jihad.
Yeah. The Sons of Jihad.
The Sons of Jihad. This despite the fact that Chindoruk is described as, explicitly a secular dude. They have this religious in nature name. It's anyway, like, so they determine that they don't know for sure that it's Russia, but there has to be a state actor behind them, right? Because, well, these people hired mercenaries to ambush us, right, to destroy these hackers that we've gotten in contact with. But the Sons of Jihad, they didn't have the resources to hire mercenaries. There had to have been a state actor behind them.
Yeah.
Like, so,
Or
I mean,
maybe like or maybe just like everybody we don't like. Maybe
well,
they all did it.
riddle me this, Jacob. They can hire hackers that can destroy a country, but not mercenaries that can carry out a hit.
No, it's impossible.
It's a very specific level of wealth that we're dealing with.
Well, they've only got cryptocurrency.
Truly,
Or they've
yes.
only got like, well, what is it? You spend in Fortnite V-Bucks, maybe. So
Oh
maybe
yeah,
like maybe it's like a situation where the two Eastern European characters, again, I forget their name, Augie and
Nina.
Nina, the two Ukrainian characters. Are they explicitly Ukrainian?
So Augie is Ukrainian, Nina
Mhm.
is Georgian, and that
That's
becomes
right.
very important. That
Yeah.
becomes very important for reasons.
These characters are yeah, they're getting paid in V-Bucks. That's why they're able to be like it's an absurd amount of V-Bucks, but or Robux maybe if they really were like trying to get the best work done.
Maybe like they were paid 1 week and then the fucking cryptocurrency was cratered
It
in value the
crashed.
next week when they
Yeah,
had to hire the mercenaries.
yeah, the week after Bill Clinton sold all his Bitcoin after going to a Bitcoin conference in the Caribbean with Sam Bankman-Fried. Really,
Yes, yes. Well, those are the strings that you need to pull in this workaday world in your workaday position as most powerful man on the planet.
yeah, just like normal stuff, you know?
That's the
Uh,
other thing that gets me about this book. Like it's I mean, video games do the president protagonist thing really well because they tend to lean into the inherent silliness of it. Like Saints Row
mhm.
4, you're fighting aliens and demons, like Metal Wolf Chaos, right? It's a fucking like
Oh, we
giant
love,
robot game.
I love that.
Yes, but like
Robert.
but you're not the Jonathan Lincoln Duncan is not the underdog. He has access to the full arsenal of the US military. He is the commander in chief. He can call helicopters with the snap of a finger.
But he
You know?
might get impeached. I guess we're supposed to, and because of his blood sickness, I guess that's like supposed to be the things that like level him out,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
doesn't function that way.
yeah, he's somebody who is just impossible to humanize, try as Patterson might.
Right. Every attempt to humanize him just makes the author feel like they don't know the authors feel like they don't know what a human is like. Which like I would expect more maybe out of Patterson. Maybe I understand Bill Clinton not knowing what a human is. Um, like one thing I was gonna note, like also like villain motivations. Like you can do a pro-America, anti-Russia thing with like a fairly competent, like still villain. Like I don't know, like the movie Air Force One is a pretty good pro-America movie with a good Russian villain. Like I was thinking about Air Force One as like an example, but it's not even able to do the like, oh, you hollowed out my country thing. Like it's not even able to throw that out as this like critique. Like any critique of the United States in this book has to either be completely hollow on its face or has to be like immediately slapped down or at the very least has to be like a thing we're working on.
Hmm.
You can't have like any ambiguity, any like the book thinks it's morally ambiguous because it has scenes like the drone strike scene,
God.
because it has scenes like the police doing bad things, but it doesn't have moral ambiguity because like it still is presenting the US as like the greatest of all goods, and it's still presenting every other alternative as pure anarchy. In fact, the president in his final speech says we were saved from anarchy by mere moments, anarchy in the streets. It's like so also presenting one's own people as like these hordes as well. It's not just the people outside the country, but also the masses of the people inside the country who are bad as well.
Yes,
It's the
yes.
mentality is just deeply diseased. Like I don't know, I know that's not materialist, but it is just deeply diseased.
Well, yes, and it returns in the prose now and again to the orders that the president has in place, the orders that he's drawn up for, instituting price controls, declaring
Sure.
martial law, suspending the writ of habeas corpus. He has all these contingencies in place for the impending techno apocalypse that's going to sweep the nation. And this is what really gets me. I mentioned this to you earlier. The for a techno thriller, for a genre that demands imagination and creativity, there's a remarkable lack of imagination on display here because of all the crises sweeping the nation. This is what the president is prepared for, the apocalypse, something existentially threatening, not, anything quotidian, not anything immediately threatening like homelessness or God forbid a pandemic, perhaps. He's preparing for the wholesale collapse of this system that he's um that he's the executive of.
Yeah. Uh,
And the villain, or purportedly the villain, what the text leads us to believe is the villain, who the text leads us to believe is the villain, is his vice president,
Mm-hmm.
Catherine Brandt, who we cut away ever so often to her fuming about being the president's runner-up, right? And practicing at one point her swearing in speech, if and when the president is permanently abducted or perhaps even killed, right?
You think he stole that from like Hillary? Like she does that in the mirror every morning, like pretends like she's
There's
becoming president.
there's a couple of different Hillarys in the text, really.
It's a host of Hillarys, no doubt.
Yes, and it's interesting, Brandt, because the president, because President Duncan is remarkably magnanimous. The book would have us believe. He gives Catherine Brandt, his vice president, a seat at the table in terms of like decision making, and entrusts her with all these classified. I mean, she knows about Dark Ages, right? She's basically the anti-Kamala in terms of what she gets to know and do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I was actually thinking that exact same thing. She's in the loop, you know?
Hmm.
She's not really his number two, but like she is more important than I'd say your average vice president is to an administration.
Yes. Yes. And so this is where it gets to the, I mean, this is where it gets to the really, I mean, there's basically two action sequences in this book, right? There's the battle at the stadium. That's the word I'm looking
Stadium and
for.
then getting chased, yeah.
There's the battle at the stadium and the chase subsequently, right? And then there's the battle in the forest that comes much later toward the end of the book, right? And between the two, there's there's the most boring plotting mystery in the world, where
Could it have been?
they're
Who
getting
betrayed me?
they're getting to the bottom of this like techno mystery. At one point, as sort of a prelude to all this, a Defense Department contractor's drone factory explodes in Los Angeles, based.
Mm-hmm.
It's that thing that they think is the Chinese, right? They ask the most obvious question in the entire book: why would they want to blow up a defense contractor's airplane plant? I fucking wonder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah, it's just they're I mean, like it does like to an extent like reveal their own like just the thing that they're just like most obvious blind spots.
yes,
Like to me, like that was one of the most baffling lines in the entire book. I'm glad you reminded me of that because I had forgotten of them just like not even really even being able to register like why anyone would have it out for like a defense contractor.
right.
Like like in the books, like even a book that is already addressed drone strikes, notably. Uh Wild. Just really
Yeah, drone strikes, and
wild.
of course, even leaving aside the destruction that these merchants of death are responsible for the world over. I mean, this is one of my favorite statistics, favorite in quotes, right? Since 9/11, half fully half of all defense spending has gone to private defense contractors. Hundreds of billions of dollars each year just shoveled into the pockets of people whose job it is to make and to write articles in the Washington Post, for example, in which Lockheed Martin is a shareholder. Just writing all manufacturing consent for the continued project of endless war. I mean, this particular line really clinches it for me. Anyone sitting on a couch in his underwear could undermine the security of a nation, right? When they're discussing the hacking that leads to this gas explosion, right? I mean, this is the great oversimplification that they sell us to manufacture consent for the expansion of the national security, the national defense state, right? The idea that an entire state apparatus can be taken down by one sufficiently ambitious nerd, and the only thing stopping them is rampant defense spending, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you see the same thing you see the same hand wringing about like AI from the idea that our information hygiene is forever compromised by the democratization of news, by the loss of trust in our media, as the president mused on earlier, by sophisticated writing tools that can generate whole narratives in the snap of a finger, and that paranoia somehow never scales up to state actors, right?
Right.
Peddling influence on a national, on an even global scale. And when it does, they're only afraid of Russia and China.
Yeah, and it's also like a situation where the happily ever after of this book, the main part of it is, and then we like really overhauled our cybersecurity systems.
Oh
And
yes.
like, and everyone's supposed to be like breathing a deep sigh of relief, like collective
Hmm.
sigh of relief. Uh, it's wild, and it's just genuinely like that. That is, this idea of like how unstable our republic is. The classic Benjamin Franklin, I've given you a republic if you can keep it, kind of thing. But like, but also like, yeah, so this narrative that like, oh, it's so fragile, one guy can destroy it, but also like, okay, so why even bother? Or why bother why are you pissing off so many of these one guys who could bring it down? Because like, but for the good graces of this like just, well-meaning duo of former terrorists, so goes the United States. It's really like, say, and of course it's like great man of history on steroids, but like it is like, I keep trying to like come up with like analogies and points, but it is really just, when I'm like looking at this, I'm like, this is really like just all there is. Like, this is all there is, like behind like their heads. Like, I think they really believe this shit. Like,
Hmm.
they really buy this shit, and it's baffling. And like, millions of like, not maybe not millions of people buy it, but like millions of people are bought into a system that is like liberalism, that like functions with this kind of thinking as its primary ideology, that's going to like lead us into the light. And like, no matter how well meaning, like, this is all there is. This is the core of it. It is completely hollow, competent or incompetent, good or bad, Bill Clinton or Joe Biden or Barack Obama or whoever. It is just the monologues of this book really are just like the ethos at the center of this like ideology. And if you can even get through reading this book, like, you should be able to like punch it full of holes without even like with its own internal logic, without even like referencing outside scenarios. And when you of course reference outside scenarios, it becomes immediately laughable. I really am like, yeah, I'm mad about this book. This book really, I told you, I want to get the I would get the flu again before I read this book again. Like,
I
this
would
is
have,
just,
I
oh
would
my
have, I
God.
would have thrown it across the room had I not been reading it on my phone. Okay, so we're almost halfway through the book, and they go take.
Sorry, turn into
Yes,
the Joker for a second.
yes. I hope y'all are buckled in, people, because oh god.
Hey, thank you for listening to part one of our discussion on The President is Missing. Did I say that okay? Yeah, if you like that, go listen to some more episodes. Go tell your friends about it. Follow us on Twitter if you're still clinging to the life raft that is that website, at Socialist Shelf, or shoot us an email to socialistshelf@gmail.com. We're happy to hear from you. We're happy to hear from you. But most of all, just let some folks know about it. And even beyond that, go read a book, a better book than this. But go read a good book, and then tell us to talk about it. Say read. You'll tell me. You'll tell me. Tell us what we're reading next. I really appreciate all of y'all, and y'all have a lovely day.